Hello there, everybody. I'm going to flip you around. Don't worry, we're going right back to the details in a second here. But hi, Nubkex here, coming at you live from Blizzcon 2019. And thanks to playing the Deathwing demo on the stage floor and in the press area as well, was able to get you the full details on every single talent that Deathwing has. So I'm going to go through all of them here today and just give a brief few thoughts on how they are, etc. So I hope that you will enjoy this. One thing to note as we go into it, I was talking to a dev, again at the demo station, and he mentioned that this build that you are going to see here, and that you will have seen from any of the live stream footage from the show floor, check out Kendrick's Wish. I recommend that live stream to check out if you want to see some gameplay. That there are going to be some changes, that this build is maybe 1 or 2 months old. So by the time Deathwing comes onto the PTR, these talents, his abilities, may have some balance tuning. Perhaps even a couple of them will have been changed a little bit. I'm not entirely sure. Didn't get any more details than that. But yeah, stay tuned. Of course, I will be diving on and checking out Deathwing on PTR as soon as he comes out. And then when he's on live servers, we'll probably just play him in Storm League all day long. So plenty of Deathwing stuff coming up. Okay, let's switch down to this. Let's get into the good stuff. All right, level 1. We have Dragon Soul, Q ability, which increases Molten Flame's healing by an additional 25%. Now this is kind of interesting. By default, Molten Flame, it's your Fire Breath, one of the highest DPS abilities in the game, and by default it heals you for 25% of the damage against heroes. So I don't know if this increases it. I presume it does increase it up to 50% of the damage is going to be healing against heroes, and it's a pretty decent one. That can add up to a lot of healing, especially because your trait is giving you armor. You can have up to 40 armor if you have all of your armor plates. So every point of healing actually matters quite a lot when you've got that much armor reducing the damage. It just increases that value. That's a pretty decent one. Molten Blood then is a talent for your trait. While Deathwing has 3 or more armor plates, he heals for 0.5% of his max health every second. So healing 1% every 2 seconds. The way your armor plates work, just to make it clear, because obviously it's important for this level 1, is that you have 4 armor plates, and whenever you lose 25% of your max health, so when you go below 75%, go below 50%, 25%, etc., you lose an armor plate, which makes you, it just removes 10 armor. You get 10 armor per plate, and you can have 4. So this is why you have 3 or more, so basically whenever you're above 75% health, you're going to start healing for that. Again, it could be very strong laning talent if you're going to be in a solo lane with Deathwing, which I don't know if you will be, but if you are, that could be a massive amount of health being healed back up, because again, with 40 armor, which you're going to have for this talent to actually work, that health that you're regenning is going to be very, very tanky health. Draconic Might is your third option at level 1. It's a trait talent. Upon losing an armor plate, Deathwing becomes protected for 0.5 seconds. So very powerful if you're going to be focused down. And one interesting thing from playing Deathwing and playing against him is that he's very tanky at high health with his armor plates, but when he starts losing them, when he gets below like half health, he has 2 armor plates, and then you bring him to 25%, you break another one, he actually gets very squishy and starts to die very quickly. So this could be a way to sort of mitigate that and protect you against it, which is cool. One thing to note as well, I'm kind of presuming that you know Deathwing's base kit here. I'll just cover some of the crucial bits, but of course Deathwing cannot be healed. That's an aspect of his trait as well. Only Regen Globes, the Healing Fountain, and his Flight ability can actually heal him. Okay, let's look at level 4 and the talents you're going to get there. We've got 3 options once again. We have Infernus, which is a Q talent. When Molten Flame is cast at full energy, its damage is increased by 100% against heroes. Which is obviously kind of insane. Like I already mentioned, the Fire Breath is one of the highest DPS abilities in the game. And this doubles its damage against heroes. Now, you can't move while you're doing it, and it does have a... don't go to sleep, laptop. It does have a bit of a wind-up to casting it, so you can move out of it relatively easily, but if you combine this with any other sort of crowd control, like you just imagine with an E2C mosh pit or something like that, drop that flame on top of it, and you almost probably solo kill some of the heroes just with that flame alone. It really is that powerful. I didn't get to play with this talent, but we did see one game playing against a Deathwing with the talent, and the damage is very noticeable when it went in, so that's cool. Heatwave is the other option. It's a W talent, and of course you have 2 W abilities depending on which form you're in, either Destroyer or World Breaker. We're going to see some talents that affect both of them. They always affect both of them. So in Destroyer form, after hitting an enemy hero with Incinerate, Deathwing deals 16 damage per second to all nearby enemies for the next 8 seconds, stacks up to 4 times. And then with World Breaker, it will increase the explosion damage of Lava Burst by 50%. So Destroyer form, the Incinerate, it's an AoE damage effect around you, centered around you, Destroyer form being the melee focused form. So adding a kind of a Burning Rage effect to that as well, burning over time is pretty cool, and it gets pretty powerful if you hit multiple heroes with it. So that seems like it could actually be a pretty decent one in a more mobile game where you are going to be playing more of a melee focused Deathwing. World Breaker with the explosion damage of Lava Burst, that one seems a little bit weaker to me. It's more of a poke ability. It seems a little less reliable to land. Again, I'll have to play test that one a bit more to see. For me, that one seems to lean a bit more towards Destroyer. And then possibly the most interesting talent at level 4, Dragon's Ire. While Deathwing has 3 or fewer armor plates, his damage is increased by 30%. So again, once you're knocked below 75% health, you break your 4th armor plate, you've got 3 or fewer. So essentially this means whenever you're below 75%, and again, you can actually heal yourself up as well with like regen globes. They won't regen the plates, only your flight ability regens plates. But you can heal yourself a little bit, so you could possibly be 100% health with 3 plates too, or fewer plates. And just a flat 30% damage boost, that's pretty crazy. That's going to affect your heroic, it's going to affect your W, your E ability, your Q, your basic attacks. It's going to affect everything. Your other talents as well, they're proccing. So that one seems to me possibly the most powerful. I actually think that this level 4 tier is a very strong talent tier that will kind of define a good bit how you're going to play the hero. It's going to have a pretty big gameplay effect. Okay, let's scroll down here. Don't spoil the level 10s. Oh no. All right, level 7. Firestorm. Level 7, they all affect your flight ability. Though Skyfall, you can see, gives you an extra button to press. But Firestorm. When Deathwing lands from his flight ability, he drops 7 meteors near the landing area, dealing 54 damage to enemies hit. All numbers here, of course, are scaled to level 1, which is the default when previewing talents. Heroes hit by the meteors reduce Dragonflight's cooldown by 5 seconds, and meteors prioritize landing on heroes, otherwise they fall randomly within the area. So kind of an interesting one here for sure. The way that it works, you can, when you take flight, it has a cast time. I think it's a long one. It's about a 5-second cast time that does get interrupted by damage. But if you do get the cast off, you fly up in the sky, and then you have a 10-second cooldown to land again. And to land again, you get 2 abilities you can cast. Actually, the text for these talents, it does actually put both of the landing ability names, but they both do the same thing, so I didn't actually bother putting them in. But it's like World Breaker and Destroyer. I think they're just the names of his forms. It just lets you choose which form to land in. And the flight ability has a 45-second cooldown. So each hero you hit with a meteor is going to reduce the cooldown of the flight, which is 45 seconds, by 5 seconds. If you hit all 7 meteors on heroes, which I presume you probably can do, it will reduce it by 35, so you'd have a 10-second cooldown to go back up and fly again. Of course, it's kind of awkward, I would say, to actually get up and fly again if you're in the middle of a team fight, because you have to walk out and do the big cast time, and then it's quite a long time before you can land again. So it's not really a thing where you're going to be flying up, healing, and then re-landing in the team fight. That's not very practical at all, at least with this talent. So do bear that in mind. Death Drop. Landing damage increased by 50%, and hitting a hero allows Molten Flame to be cast immediately. When you do land, all of your abilities have a 3-second cooldown, so this removes that cooldown for Molten Flame if you hit a hero, and 50% more landing damage. It seems okay. More important for something of a wombo combo, again, with like other CC to interlock it with. Then Skyfall is a new ability. It has a charge cooldown of 8 seconds, 3 charges with a charge cooldown of 8 seconds. After using Dragonflight, Deathwing can drop meteors anywhere within vision, dealing 115 damage to enemies in the area. Has 3 charges. If a hero is hit, Deathwing heals for 5% of its max health and reduces his landing cooldowns by 3 seconds. Now, didn't actually get to see this one in testing, but I believe that this just means that he can land from his flight a little bit faster. So again, you've got 10 seconds before you can land from your flight. If you spam out those 3 meteors and hit them all, that knocks 9 seconds off, so you can land almost immediately, on top of getting an instant 15% healing or 5% per meteor hit. So that's pretty cool. And I guess if you hit multiple heroes, you might actually, with a single meteor, you might heal for more, and so on. So that could be kind of interesting. So yeah, the level 7 talents. Yeah, they're there. They're a thing. They get a bit cooler at level 20, which we'll touch back on in a little while. Level 10 then, heroic tier. Deathwing gets his heroic ability from level 1. It's called Cataclysm. It's a 90-second cooldown, which does damage. It has a 2-second cast time. It does damage when he flies over people, and then it leaves this big burning patch on the ground, which does damage over time. Burn Beneath My Shadow, the upgrade to the heroic at level 10. When an enemy fort or keep is destroyed, the cooldown of Cataclysm is reset. Cataclysm's periodic damage is increased by 100%. So the first half of this, I think this is a really interesting one, actually. When I first saw Deathwing, I assumed that this would be pretty terrible and you'd always take the other option, but I think it's actually pretty good. Doubling the damage of the periodic effect is actually quite substantial and quite noticeable. It makes it a very scary thing to stand inside of, so it's a extremely strong zoning tool. And damage tool. The reset when you destroy a fort or a keep is obviously very unreliable. You know, like if you're fighting over like Volskaya Foundry control point or something, you're not going to be resetting your heroic with this during the fight. However, that being said, it does make pushing objectives very, very scary. Terrifying even, you know, an Immortal on Battlefield of Eternity, the Protector on Volskaya, the Dragon Knight, any objective, and pretty much all objectives do let you push, but whenever they destroy a fort, it's going to reset it. I mean, you could imagine the spiders in Tomb of the Spider Queen they could take out, you know, 2 or 3 forts in a push, so you could get 2 or 3 resets on your heroic within that time. So I think this is actually an extremely strong level 10 and would be my recommendation. Now, the other option is Bellowing Roar. It's an active ability with a cooldown of 75 seconds, 1 second cast time. Deathwing unleashes a mighty roar, dealing 25 damage, so almost nothing, to nearby heroes and fearing them for 2 seconds. The cooldown recharges 50% faster for each missing armor plate. Now, the problem I found with this one is that 1 second cast time is actually, it feels longer than it sounds, and it also is a relatively small radius around Deathwing himself. Deathwing's really big, and the sphere is actually a relatively small area around him. So on top of having the cast time, it's actually pretty awkward to use. It's quite difficult to use. And Deathwing doesn't have a ton of movement of options available to him. So yeah, actually, it's not as good as it sounds, I think, this one. Additionally, the cooldown recharging faster for each missing armor plate. Well, again, the problem being that it's a cast time ability in a very short melee range around Deathwing. Are you going to get 2 of these off in a single fight? Well, I really don't think so, with a 75-second cooldown, even if you're stacking this up. And bearing in mind, if you're missing all your armor plates and you go in to cast this sphere, you're probably just going to die. So, yeah, that's a pretty interesting one there. We'll see how it plays out in practice. Maybe it will end up being as good as I initially thought when I heard about these, but for me right now I'm leaning towards the damage on Cataclysm. Level 13 then, Wicked Inferno for a Q. Molten Flame's energy cost is reduced by 15 per second. So by default, I think it might be like, I can't remember. I'm sorry. I think it's like 20 energy or 30 energy to cast it. And then by default, it might be 10 energy to cast. And then by default, it drains 30 energy per second. So that would make sense, 10 to cast. And then you can cast it for 3 seconds by default with 100 energy. This halves the cost to cast it per second. And you can instantly see the combination here with the talent at level 4, which doubles its damage against heroes if you cast it at full energy. You can channel this for a really long time, doing crazy high damage to heroes that are hit by it. That's such a powerful zoning tool, so pretty cool. Ruination then is for his E ability. For Destroyer form, the bite for Onslaught now slows by 60% for 1.5 seconds. Onslaught is a small dash, which does a bite, like a damaging bite on the front of it, so that applies a slow. And then in Worldbreaker form, reduce Earth Shatter's cooldown by 6 seconds and energy cost by 15. So Worldbreaker are the 2 sort of mini sunderings that travel out and stun. I'm not actually sure, unfortunately, what the cooldown or energy cost for Earth Shatter is, but this is a pretty substantial cooldown reduction and energy cost reduction as well for that. So that's pretty damn nice, actually. And that's a very powerful ability. It's kind of, again, it's a large AoE with a stun. It's actually got a very long range. It's a much bigger thing than it looks, Earth Shatter. It's pretty damn powerful, actually. And that's one of the main reasons that you're going to be in your Worldbreaker form. So that's a pretty substantial power increase to Worldbreaker. It seems to me to be quite a bit weaker for Destroyer form, though. That one's not quite as good, I think. Then Fire and Fury, passive. Basic attacks against rooted, slowed, or stunned enemy heroes deal 50% additional damage and restore 10 energy. This one seems very strong for me, again, with more of a Destroyer, more of the melee focused. His basic attacks do pretty good damage. It's just somewhat hard sometimes to use them. But that's a pretty powerful effect. You know, it's quite a bit more damage that will add up, and restoring energy is pretty damn good as well. It will essentially let you use your flame a lot more often, because energy management seems to be a very large part of Deathwing. You can just dump all your energy almost instantly into the flame, but then to cast your flame again, it takes quite a while to build that energy back up, and your other abilities are, of course, consuming energy as well. So, yeah, that one seems pretty damn strong. So I think level 13, it's safe to say, is a very big power spike for Deathwing. Those are all very good talents. Okay, level 16 then, we've got one really long talent here, and then we'll look at level 20 at the end. So, first up, Conflagration. Passive, dealing 350 basic ability damage to enemy heroes within 10 seconds, causes them to burn for an additional 100 damage over 4 seconds. While burning, they explode every 1 second, dealing 115 damage to all nearby enemies. So that to me seems really, really damn good. Like, insanely good. If you can activate this, that's a very powerful effect, especially in like tight quarters. It's kind of crazy. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with your heroic, but, well, there you go. Next one is Gaze Onto Destruction. Maybe it should be Unto, but it's Onto, at least I think it was. It's for your flight ability. Hitting heroes with flight landing, again, I changed the name, causes their damage to be reduced. The damage that they deal be reduced by 75% and slows them by 40% for 4 seconds. This is actually really strong. And especially when you combo with one of the level 20 talents, which I'll talk about. But it's a pretty big area that you hit when you land. And again, if you combo this with some other form of initiation, CC, like a Thrall Sundering even, like ETC and Uberak, like so many of the other tanks, what they can do, this could be super powerful. 40% for 4 seconds, that's a big slow, and 75% reduced damage as well. It's very, very impactful. So this could totally change the outcome of a team fight, so it's really strong. Then Elementium Plating is an active ability with a 90-second cooldown. While in World Breaker form, activate to gain a shield equal to 50% of Deathwing's missing health for 8 seconds. While the shield holds, Deathwing regenerates 2% of his max hit points per second. So if the shield lasts for 8 seconds, maximum you can regen is 16% of your maximum health. When the shield expires or is destroyed, Deathwing regains armor plates appropriate to his new health, and the shield effect ends immediately if you fly or if you switch your form. Sorry for some typos here, I was typing this up quickly. I want to get this done, yo! So yeah, for me, this one seems a little bit less impressive to me. I'll have to play with it to see how it actually works out. Maybe it will be important to get more into melee to give you that extra survivability so you won't get focused down quite so hard. So perhaps it will be well worthwhile, and probably something that you'll want to pop like after you break a plate so that you can potentially regen up to another to get that plate back. Though I do suspect you probably need an additional bit of healing from your Q ability probably, or a regen globe to actually regen the plate. Yeah, because if you're only getting 16% health back, you need an additional 9% health regen as well in order to actually rebuild a plate if you cast it just after you broke one. I guess you could cast it like halfway after breaking a plate or something. Anyway, you get the idea. It's kind of interesting. It doesn't mean that you are stuck in World Breaker form, which is the ranged one. But yeah, there you go. Level 16 seems pretty powerful to me. Then level 20, this is where stuff gets really cool too. Stood in the Fire, heroic upgrade, reduces Cataclysm's cooldown by 45 seconds, so that's half cooldown. Again, this will just let you cast it very frequently and really fish for engages very frequently as well. Probably not short enough to get off 2 within a single team fight, but perhaps possible to get 2 off within a single objective contest. So kind of interesting there. Arrival of a God upgrades his flight, hitting heroes with the landing, stuns for 1 second, and Deathwing also gains the benefits of his other level 7 talents. So this is where it gets really interesting to me. So you can combine that with the Gaze Onto Destruction, where you're going to do a 40% slow and 75% damage reduction, and then you can fly up in the air, you can drop all the meteors from Skyfall. If I just zoom up real fast to show you guys this actually, let's look at some of the combos. Then you're going to get all 3 of these talents. So you can go up, then with Skyfall, You can drop your 3 charges for damage, heal yourself as well, reduce your landing cooldown, then land almost immediately, doing big damage. You can go straight into a fire breath. You'll also drop a bunch of meteors when you land. That could be really awesome. And it's going to do big damage. Like, that makes it such an impactful ability. So I think it's really cool how this sort of flight build goes through the entire talent tree. The only downside is that perhaps Arrival of God, being very important to it, might be a little less effective without that. Then we also have Destroyer's Rampage, which is a trait. 1 second, guys. Sorry? I'm not sure what's happening out there. Destroyer's Rampage, the trait. For the next 6 seconds, after landing in Destroyer form, your damage is increased by 25%. Might have been room service or housekeeping or something. Oh well, I'm in the hotel room. Your damage is increased by 25%, and your basic abilities recharge 50% faster. Damaging heroes refreshes this effect, and switching to Worldbreaker form ends the effect. This is insane, especially for your melee build. The fact that you can just keep refreshing this, it reminds me a lot of Twilight Archon for Tassadar, just a super strong power buff. Again, Destroy form, your melee form, you have your Flame Breath, which is more defined by the energy that you have, really. So this is definitely a talent that moves away from actually using the Flame Breath. Your other 2 abilities, you've got your W, which is Incinerate, right? Which is that AoE fire damage around you, and then you've got your Onslaught, I think it's called, which is your kind of lunge forward and bite. So if you want to take this one with those basic abilities recharging faster, this would synergize really well with avoiding any of the Flame Breath talents earlier on in the tree and grabbing the talents that synergize with your other ones. So for example, it could work really well. Well, it could work really well with Conflagration, for example, just kind of spamming those out. It could work really well with with Ruination, getting the slow perhaps could be pretty nice. I think the big one would be some of the earlier things. So for example here, taking Heat Wave, right? When you hit enemy heroes with Incinerate, you do damage per second and it stacks up to 4 times. Well, if you got a whole bunch of cooldown reduction running all the time and you're doing more damage, you're going to be able to stack that up really high and really fast. So I think that's pretty cool. And there you go, guys. That was a look at the Deathwing talent tree. Let me know what you think. And again, of course, I will check it out in the PTR when we actually get to it. And again, you can check out some gameplay on Kendrick Swish, either on Twitch or I believe he's uploaded it to YouTube as well. And I sit in for a couple of the games there too and give some sort of co-commentary if you want to check out that. But yeah, thanks again for watching. And I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.